What is up, everyone? We are back. It is episode 8, Tea Time with Robyn.
Holy cats, how did that happen so
I
fast?
know, right? How are you doing today, Robyn?
Well, I'm doing better than I have been doing and better than I suspect a lot of our Bills fan base has been doing over the last few days. I laughed when you sent me the notes for the meeting, and it was tea time therapy session.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I thought about that, and I thought, sort of fits my background as a former psychotherapist in another lifetime. It's going to take probably the off season to dissect all the stuff we have to talk about in terms of how this season ended. We all remember 13 seconds and how that ended. And now we have an ending that was a whole lot different for a lot of reasons. But anyway, I'm here and I'm excited. I also want to say to anybody who's listening or tuning in that we are going to have our podcast, I'm excited to say, during the off season.
Yes.
T and I just have so much fun doing this.
Absolutely.
And well, I'm not going to speak for T, but I'm having a really good time.
No, this is awesome. I love it. I look forward to doing this, actually. So
yeah, I do too. It's like I get up on Thursday morning, it's like I get to hang out with T.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
we kind of discussed it. No, go ahead. You got something? Go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to add to that we will be talking a lot during the off season about related topics. One of the things I really want to start doing a deep dive into is the behavioral aspect, the mental health aspect, the emotional aspect of the game, and really do some deep diving into things that went on during this season of chaos.
Yes.
We have just negotiated our way through. But yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So this is, like she said, this is our therapy session because as Bills fans, we have been through it. And I'll take it back to Houston, the Houston game, the 13 seconds, the Kansas City game, the second Bengals game, a lot. This fan base, and I'm not, listen, this is a therapy section, but it's also not woe is me. We're not woe is me fans. So don't twist it as, oh my God, I can't believe you guys are. No, this is a therapy session. Excuse me. And we're just getting this off our chest and saying, so what I do, I normally do not go and listen to any podcasts. I try not to listen to podcasts. I try not to get my mind in other people's, put people's thoughts and their opinions on me when I do a podcast before I do my podcast. I try not to do that. This time I did it, and Robyn didn't do it. So I'm going to tell, she can tell you her part.
It usually is the other way around, but you're right. And if I can just add to that for a moment, it was very purposeful on my part not to, because I really didn't want to, like you said, put other people's thoughts into my head before we did this podcast, because I wanted it to come like straight from the heart, and see where it went. Because you and I can dig deep into stuff sometimes.
Yes. I have a quick question. I know this wasn't on there.
Yeah.
Who's responsible to get the players amped up and fired up? Who do you think that is?
I think in terms of who's responsible, well, for one, everybody is, because you have to hold each other up. But it's a good question in terms of if you're thinking about who's sort of monitoring the psychological and mental state of players and their emotional state in terms of getting amped up for games. That's a part of it. But it's also partly your emotional state that needs to be looked at and addressed separately. I think Sean McDermott really carries the load in that regard, because he's always, if you notice him, and I noticed this because that's what we did for a living, he's always paying attention. He's
Mm-hmm.
always paying attention to what's going on around him. He's always taking stuff in. He's always noticing things. He's always collecting data and putting it in his head,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. He's, like I've said on other podcasts, I believe a natural psychologist, and doesn't have the training, but does, some people don't even need the training. They just kind of instinctively have this kind of skill. And he definitely has it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's who I think I would say most of that rests on.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, let's just dig right on into it. Like, I'll be honest. I've been struggling, because the way that they played or didn't play had me, I wouldn't say angry, just let down. As fans, I was let down. I was so, I was so hyped. So I knew they were going to come out. I just knew it. I knew it with everything going on with DeMar. I'm like, DeMar is going to show up. DeMar is going to show up. And he did. And it was just, they weren't aggressive. Their energy was just not there.
Energy. You bring up that word. We'll talk about that specific word in a little bit when we talk about Matt Milano, because that's a word that he used. But I couldn't agree with you more. I just want to clarify and ask you, did you say that you had a feeling before the game that?
Yeah, I just, something, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering about that.
I did. I just, something, I just felt like it was too much. First of all, I just thought maybe DeMar shouldn't show. And then he was there, and I was like, oh, he's going to be there. I said, but what if, I was telling people in my house, but what if it's a little bit too much? What if this game is too big for these players? What if? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, something's not right. Something wasn't right. So.
Absolutely. And to further go along that road that you're on in terms of what the game presented, the lack of energy that you talk about was pretty evident, like right from the start. I mean, like ba-bing, and they're down 14-0. And that's kind of when I, before the game, had some trepidation. I was trying to not let myself get too high or too low, kind of doing the player thing, in my head. But I was worried.
Yeah.
And as I've talked about, on previous podcasts, since the incident with Damar Hamlin happened, I think that clearly these players showed, from my point of view, looking at them, they were emotionally exhausted. But I'll even add to that, I don't think it was even just the players, the coaches.
Well, everybody. You didn't hear. So Robert Stafford, yes, came out and said that they needed a break.
Really?
He stated that after that, or maybe before that New England game, they needed a break because they were just spent.
Exactly. And if they had gotten a bye week, I mean, I'm not trying to do the if
yeah, for sure, no.
But I do think it would have been timely for them to have had a bye week after everything that happened. And absolutely, we'll get into this in great detail during the off season. I just want to add to everybody's expectations for what we might be doing in the off season, because these are the kind of things that I would really like to address. Because from my point of view, and I felt much the same way you did, T, there's a disturbing pattern that's starting to emerge. And now we have enough data, in my view. We've seen enough of Sean McDermott. We've seen enough, of this type of defense We've changed offensive coordinators a couple of times, but by and large, for the most part, it's been a steady hoe. But there's something missing in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
when you get to the point where you have 13 seconds last year, and then this year is a little different, and I will say that there should be an asterisk behind everything that we say about what happened on the field, because I do think they were emotionally exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And when, in the course of a normal game, there's ebbs and flows. And you could tell that every time the Bills needed to gain some momentum, every time they maybe even got a little bit of momentum, they couldn't maintain it.
Right. Right. Right.
They couldn't.
Yeah.
There was nothing there. There was just nothing there. They looked like a bunch of automatons out there doing whatever they had to do to get through the game.
It definitely was again, Brandon Bean did say after Thanksgiving, he's seeing something change in the team. And now looking back on it, as fans, we're like, and I'll say this for me, a win is a win, but then you're just like, man, they gotta get it together. Like that game, yes, they won, but they barely won. And I get it that the Bills came out in the first 2-3 games on fire. Like, and there was some games where it was just like, why is this game so close? What is going on? Why is Stephon Diggs not being targeted? Like like you said, we're going to talk about this stuff because Stephon Diggs would disappear in games, and we're just like, where is he? Why is he not being targeted? What is going on?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And this disturbing pattern in the postseason, it's a repeated pattern. And when you see something happen like this, where it boils down to, and yes, it's execution on the field, I understand that, but there is still, like, I'll just give you an example. Sean McDermott going crazy with the timeouts when he didn't need to use them. And he panicked because he said afterwards, this, he didn't have, there wasn't the right setup on defense on the field. And I get that, but still, this is a repeated problem for him in terms of, timeouts and even challenges, historically, if you look at the challenges that he decides upon. So, and everybody that's listening to this knows, I love Sean McDermott. Love him. In no way do I think that he he should be removed as a head coach and all this stuff that people say after there's a heartbreaking loss like that. But the Bills went 14-4 this season. It's not like they didn't have success during the regular season, but that's the point. When are we going to start converting that success into the playoffs? He's the one that talks about championship caliber. I didn't see anything championship caliber on the field against the Bengals.
Let me ask you this. And it's one of those what if, what would have happened if this would have happened, but they were close to losing that game against Miami. Now, if that would have happened, like, I think some immediate fires would have happened, because there's no way that you should have gone backwards. Mm-mm. And I'm not here for, see, it's tough because I'm like, if they lost, maybe it would have been somebody sparked some fire in somebody's butt to say, we need some changes. And I'm not the type of fan, fire everyone. I'm not that.
Right.
But something needs to happen. He always talking about looking yourself in the mirror. This team, this coaching staff needs to take a hard look and see, why is it regular season defense is great, right? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But come to the postseason, we can't do anything.
Yeah, playoff performance, matters because you're one and done. And we have this repeated pattern, and it is disturbing. And we can analyze this to death, and we will.
Oh yeah.
Looking forward to it. But clearly, there is a playoff process.
Yes.
He loves the word process. McDermott
Yes.
loves the word process. Do we wonder if the playoff process needs to be taken apart to the studs and figure out what is going on during the playoffs, that they are making all these mental errors on the sideline?
Is it too intense for them? Is it too um everything is under a magnifying glass to where you're too afraid to even make any changes, to do anything? Because let's be quite honest, the defense is predictable.
Yeah,
It's predictable.
it is. And the defensive line, as Brandon,
Oh,
and I did listen to his presser. However, I think that he feels, and we're kind of getting into this ahead of time, but I'll just lead into
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go
saying
ahead.
this about Bean. You know, there are process changes that need to take place. And I can't imagine, because it seems to me that Bean and McDermott are both very transparent, very open-minded in terms of where they're going to go in terms of looking at their own behavior. And the process in terms of the playoffs needs to be re-examined, and how they perform under fire. You bring up the issue of performance anxiety, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that is an issue. I'm not sure. I don't get to look at the sideline enough to see, what's going on. But the one thing I did notice during the season on the sideline was far less interaction between players than there has been in years past. When I was at the Minnesota game, I sat right behind the bench, and I noticed that the players, they were getting the crowd revved up, but they weren't revving each other up. And not a lot of that this season compared to in the past. So I don't know internally, what transpires, or what happened to the sideline process, if you will, or
Right.
personality. But it just looked to me like there was less energy going on between the players
Mm-hmm.
than there has been in the past. And I don't even know what that means, but it means something. It's definitely noteworthy.
And Brandon Bean is not going to throw anybody underneath the bus. He's not going to do that. And he's going to sugarcoat a lot of things that, as fans, we see it. And I mean, and of course, we want answers, and we're not going to get them. He's not going to give us answers. The coach is not going to throw anybody underneath the bus either. I mean, although somebody was thrown underneath the bus today, the safety coach got fired. Okay, great, awesome, but he's the fall guy. Whatever. I don't know. I seen a text, not a text. I'm sorry, a tweet by Thurman Thomas, and I was like, that's just simple. He said, we need dogs on this team.
Well,
Period.
it's a good point. And boy, don't those 90s Bills know.
Oh,
They are, they, each and every one of them has so much wisdom from losing 4 Super Bowls in a row.
let me ask you this, Robyn. Why isn't it any of those 90s players coaching?
I don't think they want to.
Okay.
I think that if any of them wanted to, they would be, welcomed with open arms. But as you know, just from looking what these coaches do, with the Bills, they have no life.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they truly, truly have no life, no home life. And I think, like, for our 90s guys, they left everything they had on the field. And now I think deservedly so, they're enjoying their retirement, and they are mentoring. I
Yes.
see that, with Sean McDermott, more than any other head coach, he's brought these 90s players in, and allowed them to develop really good and therapeutic relationships. I think
Right.
players, it helps.
Yeah. That was just a question, just wondering.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, should we move on? Um, we on the list Matt Milano. We wanted to talk a little bit about him, and I'll pass this on after I make my notes here.
Mm-hmm.
I said here that he's never a guy who raises controversy,
No.
and it's true. Matt Milano is if you could literally create the perfect linebacker, who's quiet and does nothing but go about his business and doesn't, disturb anybody in the process, it would be Matt Milano.
Absolutely.
And to some extent, it's to his detriment, because I think that's why he didn't get voted in the Pro Bowl, because he's not a personality who's out there putting his face in the camera all the time. And I think he's under-recognized. But one thing I think I'd like to see from Matt Milano in the future is a little bit, and I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. All I can do is see what I see. And I wish he was more vocal with.
I didn't even know what his voice sounded like, to be quite honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's what he sounds like. Okay. All right, Matt.
He's soft-spoken,
Yes.
He's kind of a soft-spoken guy, but he's also a man of few words.
Mm-hmm.
He'll answer a question. He'll answer any question. And this is what you and I wanted to touch on, was the comment that he made about how the defense, because I think he was specifically referring to the defense, but he might as well have said the entire team and coaching staff lacked energy.
Yeah. When I seen the pressers, some of his presser, and he just said they came out with no energy. And he was flat.
Yeah.
Like normally the offense or the defense would heighten or hype them up. They'll do something to make a stop or something like that. Josh should do. There was none of that. You're feeding off each other, and there was nothing. He said there was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, that says a lot. Like, because you're out there, you're like, okay, I know Josh is going to do something to hype us up so we can go out there and make a stop. And it was nothing.
Exactly.
That's
it was noticeable, and he nailed it. And he was asked about it by more than one reporter. And
really,
they wanted him to clarify what he meant by lack of energy. And I think he was himself exhausted at the locker room, when they were talking to him. And he even said they asked him a technical question about the defense, and he basically said, "Look, guys, I'm just like trashed."
Right. Basically.
I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what he said. And it's understandable. But if a guy like Matt Milano is raising questions like that, then you have to again go back and look at your playoff process, because something isn't right, and it needs to be addressed. It'll be addressed hopefully during the off season. I think we're going to see a lot of changes, because we have a lot of, I call them 1-year rentals,
mm-hmm.
where we sign a player for 1 year. And like Jordan Phillips, for example, is he coming back?
I would rather have Shaq. I mean, I would rather have Jordan Phillips too. And we're going to get all of that this off season, because those are dogs. And
Thurman Thomas said it. Need more dogs.
Yeah. And these are some questions that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have to ask themselves. Who on this team wants to be here, basically? Like, who wants to be here on this team? Who wants to develop a championship caliber team? Like, it's so frustrating because of the way they left the field.
Is. In more than 1 year in a row, it's not like, okay, it's just this year. We've exited the playoffs in dramatic fashion
every time,
and not necessarily in a good way. But that is what I think has to go through the whole process. I will also say, getting back to what happened in the Cincinnati game, it was very clear to me that both lines of scrimmage were completely rolled.
Oh,
The defensive line, the offensive line, nothing that the Bills could do could maintain the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball, and that's unacceptable. I think the offensive line, I'm questioning. We'll get into this during the offseason, but I wonder a lot about, is Mitch Morse going to be able to, carry on? Do they need to get another center? And of course, I wouldn't finish this podcast without saying, you better be ready for me to be whining and whining and whining. And whining some more about a one technique defensive tackle who is not a rental, who will suck up double coverage and allow Ed Oliver to do his thing.
what was that?
So,
okay.
That's what I have to say about that.
So you think Ed's, we're going to get into it though. You think Ed's going to be here?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a very legitimate question, because he's another player who I can't say that he's really lived up to his potential.
He was picked 9th, right? 10th or something like that?
Something like that overall, yes. And you expect to see more from him. And then there's Epinesa. We expected to see more from him. So we have to look at the process of how they're constructing a defensive line and an offensive line while we're at it, because it all starts up front. Anybody who knows me from Twitter or wherever they've seen me in cyberspace knows that I am all about the line of scrimmage. The rest of the stuff is window dressing. The real fight,
it's in the trenches.
In the trenches, absolutely. And I'm not sure. Okay, Spencer Brown, he was in his second year, hit and miss. You got your internal offensive line shifting around all through the season. And I'm not complaining as if other teams don't have the same thing. I mean, the Bengals were playing with 3 new offensive lines.
You wouldn't have known it, though.
No.
You wouldn't have known it.
That's a problem for us.
Not even that, Robyn. And we're getting off, but prior to that, Miami had guys down.
Yes.
We didn't get to that quarterback.
No, we didn't.
And you thought you were going to get to Cincinnati's quarterback, Joe Burrow, who gets the ball out quicker than anybody in the league?
Right.
And we spend so much money, and I say we, I know it didn't come out of my pocket, on that defensive line, and it did nothing.
It did not live up to expectations, that's for sure. Not enough sacks, not enough, hits, not enough turnovers, not enough. Not enough. We told you, y'all, it's going to be a therapy session. It is.
We told you.
Session, and it's a therapy session for us. But we can move on, because this actually leads into the next part of our discussion that we wanted to talk about, and that was Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, man. So how do you feel about that?
I'm probably less irritated. I don't know what word to use to describe what most people felt about his reactions on the sideline and after the game and so on. I don't have as much of a problem with it as some people do. And I'll tell you why. I believe that wide receivers like him, that's how they're wired. They are high strung, they are focused, they are driven. And Stefon, he wears his, he wants to win. He's has
a competitor.
He is
you know it. We're both going to say the same thing.
Yes, to the core.
Yes.
And here's the deal, though. As passionate as he is, he's not on the field making decisions like Josh Allen is.
He has to wait for the ball to come to him.
Exactly. And I think that frustrates him when it's not coming his way enough, when he thinks that he could do more on offense. People say that's a sign of selfishness. In his case, I don't think that it is. I
when
honestly think that it's because he becomes frustrated because he's not the quarterback and he can't make all the decisions on the field that need to be made. In his view, I think
right, right,
you
right.
know,
But
that
I mean, it's I get frustrated when people want to bring the digs of Minnesota to Buffalo. I get
right.
frustrated with that because I don't think you understand the whole just of why Diggs left
Hmm.
Minnesota. It wasn't because, no, I'm not getting the ball. They changed the whole scheme around to be a run more scheme. And he wasn't getting the ball. So, but that's besides the point. I don't want to get off of about what Diggs did.
Yeah.
If we are fans frustrated with this play and how they played, and we're not playing, and Diggs is out there. This man, you know, he's a competitor. They say it. They say Diggs is he's the top competitor, and he
Absolutely.
left. But we don't even know why he did what he did. Like what he's saying, we don't know. We could just speculate. He's saying this. He's cussing Josh out. Do we know that for sure? We don't know that. But he left, and maybe he just needed downtime because if I'm going to go to this presser, I may say something that you guys are going to really take some sound bites out.
Yes, and allow him to process
Yes.
emotions in his own way. Why is there this is the way you have to do it or that's the way you have to do it. Even though it looked bad. So the camera's panning on him,
Right.
Josh, and Josh has got his head down and so on. Josh knew, I'm sure at that time, I'm sure it didn't even faze him that Stefan was doing Stefan.
Yeah.
That's how he is.
Let me ask you this though. Josh was frustrated in a game. He threw his helmet, or I don't know if he threw it or whatever he did. Now, when a quarterback does it, it's like he's frustrated. You can see it. Blah, blah, blah. But when a wide receiver does it, he's a diva. What are we doing here?
Well, that's the myth and the legend of the wide receiver, and that their personalities all have to be the same.
Oh,
I say that tongue in cheek, of course, but
right.
Diggs. My final thought about this is that Diggs brings up excellent points. He's frustrated about performance in the playoffs. I get it. We all saw him standing in Kansas City
Oh,
after the game was over. He and that was 2 years ago.
right.
Okay, so he's tired of working his butt off through the whole season and then getting to the playoffs and, basically crapping the bed.
Yeah.
Um, he's frustrated with it and I understand that.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm at with Diggs. I get where he's coming from.
Absolutely. And listen, he doesn't have a lot of time. So, and I'll take that all day. I'll take that competitor all day. Give me some of those guys like that on the field. Give me two more Digs. I'm good. I'm like we're good. But we can move on. We kind of touched on Brandon Beane's presser.
Yeah, that kind of rolled into
Yeah.
to everything else. The only thing I would say, because I have in my notes here, um, and this doesn't have anything to do directly with Brandon Beane, but I will say that the Bills did miss Tommy Doyle this year.
Yep.
I think that Tommy Doyle, when he comes back, hopefully he's recovered enough to where he can start to be inserted in the regular lineup for the offensive line. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if it might be time to move Deion Dawkins inside and put Tommy Doyle at left tackle. And then you've got
Ooh.
bookend offensive linemen that are huge. The the key is, and I don't know what other people saw, but the very limited amount of time that I did see Tommy Doyle on the field, I thought he had natural instincts that were superior to Spencer Brown's. But that's just my,
Mm.
casual observation.
Right. Right.
And Spencer Brown, I think, needs to learn how to play smarter. So that's just all I wanted to add to,
Okay.
what we were talking about.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely dive into that
Yeah,
O-line. And you're probably going to take the lead on that because,
that's okay.
yeah, when it comes to the O-line, I got questions, but
I have a lot of questions, uh,
yes,
but we're gonna pile our way through it.
for
Um,
sure, for sure.
okay, so our last topic, the big one, Ken Dorsey. It's such a controversy. Offensive coordinators, they really take a lot of heat. Um, the guy finished 14-4. So let's keep things in perspective. But I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts about him, T?
So after everything wore off, because I was never fire Ken Dorsey. Listen, y'all, it's his first year. He was going to go through these bumps and bruises. We know he came from an internal hiring. We understood it. Oh man, Robyn, I wouldn't have been so upset, for lack of a better word, if Stefon Diggs wasn't lost in his offense. Because there were times when I'm like, is Steph injured? Because he's not. Like, you would see him first quarter, third, fourth quarter, where's Steph? And then you went and made a trade and brought Nyheim Hines in, and you didn't use him. So I'm like, okay, Ken, what's up, bro?
Yeah,
You got some of these wide receivers running the same routes, and I'm just like, what is going on? It looked a mess.
it did. I never really felt like I had a true grasp of what a Ken Dorsey offense looks like.
Because
And
emotion was gone too.
I was hoping for some two tight end sets. We didn't see much of that. But then on the other hand, when you have all of these snaps where you have Bobby Hart on the field as a, tackle eligible, and the reason why do we have Bobby Hart on the field as tackle eligible? It's because your offensive line can't get the job done on their own. And that's disturbing. I was never in the I hate Bobby Hart camp, but I think that it's certainly a statement, isn't it, that your five offensive linemen can't get the job done, so you have to bring in a tackle eligible. Yeah. Now, my thoughts regarding Ken Dorsey, I love him. I think he could grow into being a very good offensive coordinator. And I agree with you, T. I think it's too soon to, throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I will never in my entire lifetime forget him going bananas in the press box.
Right. I loved it.
I loved it too. He's a very passionate guy. But I don't think that there was a real identity, and maybe he's just starting to form this in terms of what a Ken Dorsey offense looks like. But what I would like to see more of next year is more of a commitment to the run game and establishing the run game so that you can come in and show an opponent, I will and can run the ball against you at will anytime I feel like it.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that feeling, in very many games, maybe one or two where we had a dominant, what I thought was we established a run game that then allowed Josh Allen to do his thing. But Josh Allen isn't going to be able to do his thing, and he isn't even going to stay upright if we don't have a better offensive line around him that can protect him and give him more time to throw the ball. He's not Joe Burrow. He's not going to get the ball out
He
instantaneously.
doesn't.
That's not his style.
Nope.
And so I think that's a huge area of opportunity that needs to be worked on. And that's not necessarily on Ken Dorsey, but in a way it is, because he's the offensive coordinator and therefore he's responsible for that.
And you saying that, it just sparks something. So who's the guy to rein Josh in? Is that Ken Dorsey?
Yes, supposed to be.
Because it seems to me sometimes, because every play has a check down. Every play has a check down. You have the check down. You see the check down. You can see Josh just not looking at it. he would rather take the ball down the field. Okay, fine. You keep doing that. Ken, come down. Come down the field. Come from up there. Come down and reel him. Hey, bro, do not shoot the ball down the field again. Like, if that's Ken, you need to be more forceful, because it just seems like Josh can do whatever. Ken's like, I'm fine with it, Josh, as long as you're fine with it. Like, we cannot be afraid to say, Josh, I think what you should have done, and this is just me looking, and I don't know what the meetings are. This is just me saying and looking, hey, there's no one checking Josh.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And it becomes a point where you have to wonder who's gonna sit down with Josh and talk more emphatically about the checkdowns, as you put it, looking for the best play, not necessarily the home run play.
Right.
And that's Josh. He wants a home run on every play. That's where he's at. And that mentality needs to change. It would change, I think, if Ken Dorsey also made more of an emphasis on the short passing game, kind of forcing him to slow down.
Yes.
And we'll see, whether
have we had a game like that this year? That's interesting, because normally I'll go back and watch like all the games in the off season. I'll go back and watch them. So that's probably going to be homework for me to do.
Yeah.
And I don't want Josh to be, don't get me wrong, I don't want Josh to be check down Josh. I don't, because I think he throws a beautiful ball.
He does.
I just need for him to be mindful of the defense and be mindful of, if you take this pass, this throw, I can live another day.
If you take a 5-yard pass every single time, you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
I mean, that you have to think about the process of the game rather than looking for the kill shot.
Yeah.
On every play. And I think to some extent that's where Josh was at. Like you said, you would see him overlook open receivers, or Dawson Knox, open for a first down, and Josh throws it 30 yards and incomplete or intercepted or whatever.
He did 3 in a row.
He did. And I do think that during the off season, that's something that I hope he will work on with Jordan Palmer.
Yeah.
In terms of, because Jordan Palmer is like, he's like a mental guru as well.
Yes.
And he can also get into Josh's head in terms of saying, look, dude, just because I love that phrase, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
And just because you can throw the ball 80 yards on every play doesn't mean you should do that.
I love that.
So whatever. But it's been a long, hard, difficult season. And we're just getting started here, you and I, because
yes,
episode 8, we have therapy sessions set up for the whole off season.
It might just be therapy session on off season. That might just be our
I'm down with it.
Yeah, our title for the whole off season, just therapy session, because we're going to need it. But on a bright note, we got some news that the Bills are going overseas. Yeah, overseas. They're going to London. London.
Very cool. I know a lot of people don't like the overseas games because you have to give up a game.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Do the Bills lose a home game because of that?
They were saying that they might lose a home game. I didn't really check into it, but yeah.
I guess it's against the Giants, so we'll have day ball. I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup.
Ooh-wee.
Dayball versus Dorsey. We'll see. We're going to see who wins that battle. But I think once every 8 years, every team has to do an overseas game. And this was the year that the Bills had to do it. I'm kind of glad they're going to London because the time change is less than if you're going to Germany or, other places. But we will see. It'll probably be a very interesting game.
Yeah, I think I love it. I'm not going to lie. I love
We have a lot of fans,
Yeah.
Bills backers clubs and,
Oh,
Scotland.
yes. Right.
Oh, absolutely. They're already in full force, getting ready for the tailgate party.
I seen it on Twitter. They were saying, if you need some place to go, we got you, Bills Mafia. So that's pretty cool. I love that. Yeah, I love all of that. Well, I have no more unless you do.
I don't, except
All
to
right.
say that I love you.
Love
And
you.
I am so glad to be doing these podcasts with you. And I'm looking forward to the off season. And I guess the other thing I want to say is I'm very happy that we have this podcast that is relaxed and the focus isn't on producing something that ABC is going to pick up or whatever. It's us. It's just us talking.
Yes.
And we're going to have lots of stuff to talk about during the off season. But I want to say thank you for the invitation and all the work you do putting this together, because I deeply appreciate your friendship.
I do too. You know how I feel about you. I love you so much. And I appreciate you coming on this journey with me. And it is just the beginning. I love you. I love you. Thank you again. This is going to be so, I don't care if you don't listen. It's their therapy session for me. And I mean, I do care. But it's just
it's ours. Okay.
Yes.
If you want to join, that's fine.
Yes.
If you don't, that's okay too.
Absolutely. But guys, we appreciate you.
Yes.
This is not the end of the Buffalo Bills. It's just the beginning. We are just in our feelings, and things are going to change around because they have to. They have to. This team is too good for it to just be done. Brandon Bean, this draft is yours, buddy. We need you to produce. We do. We do. We thank you guys again for listening. And like always, it's Go Bills. Peace out, y'all.